Namo Gurave Namo Bodhaya Namo Dharamaya Namo Sangaya Namo Gurave Bodhaya Namo Dharamaya Namo Sangaya Namo Gurave Namo Bodhaya Namo Dharamaya Namo Sangaya. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing generosity and the other far-reaching attitudes, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing generosity and the other far-reaching attitudes, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing generosity and the other far-reaching attitudes, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. So where we left off last week was at the end of verse 7. Which is on page 54 through 55. The main focus and emphasis of verse 7 is exchange of self for others. And within this main focus, and then commentary on the root verse, Geshe directly ties, or takes the opportunity to explain the practice of the Tonglen, or what is known as Tonglen practice, or to complement the main topic of this verse. So we mentioned to you all the previous week, or the week before that actually, that we would go through the explanation of the Tonglen practice when we met up again. And so in alignment with verse 7, if we could all turn to page 153, you'll see here in the text that there's a separate explanation on the teachings of the Tonglen practice. And this is in accordance with the topic of verse 7. So if you can turn to page 153, 3. You'll see here that the explanation of the Tonglen falls under 5 categories. And of these 5, we'll go through 4 today. And then the 5th category is then further elaborately explained in the following pages. And so we'll go through the first 4 today. We'll collectively read the first 4 categories, and then Yujishama and I will share a few of our thoughts with you, and then we'll surrender the mic and the stage to all our participants for any questions, comments, or anything else you have to share or discuss. So let's first read the text together. Tonglen practice. 5 categories of Tonglen. Equality of oneself and others. The first topic to contemplate is that we are all equal. This doesn't mean that we all have the same appearance, size, or build. As explained in the Lama Choba or Guru Puja, all sentient beings are equal in that we all dislike even the least suffering, and we have an insatiable desire for happiness. The more happiness we have, the more we want. Realizing this, we should have the same concern for others as for ourselves, and we should cherish them as we do ourselves. When we start to practice this, we can first start with our spouse, our friend, or the people with whom we live. If we are able to equalize our concern for those beings with the concern we have for ourselves, then we can gradually expand the boundary of concern to our neighbors and so forth. 차선 대비는 발로 관시가 대전을 droba 관시가
차선 때 일로샤
일로 아니 제일 lama chaba dantas ya des jana ro te khadu tina ro
re nidu ro jashana ra
dai
de 차선 로사라
or
devodo valora
or
아니 가운데 야 lama chaba 시
se this is cup
so
jara
des
no das
decision of jashana ra
or disadvantages of self-cherishing. The second topic is the disadvantages of selfishness. We need to come to the realization that all the suffering and all the things that we dislike stem from selfishness or self-cherishing. For that reason, the Lama Choba likens self-cherishing to a chronic illness. In fact, it is far worse than the most contagious disease because it serves as the cause of all undesired suffering and illness in our life. Whenever we experience suffering in the form of illness or negative situations, we should confront our own self-cherishing and say to ourselves, "You are responsible for all this suffering." Every single day, we have to point the finger at our own self-cherishing and accept that it is responsible for all our suffering. The grasping of ego or self-cherishing becomes one of the biggest monsters. We need to realize that it is our worst enemy and that it lives within us. So for that reason, we need to work at finding some means of removing this enemy or bringing it under control. It says in Shantideva's Bodhicharya Avatara that all the suffering and predicaments in this world are the result of self-cherishing, of being concerned only for the happiness of ourselves and regarding ourselves as more precious than others. Conversely, Shantideva states in the last two lines of this verse that all the existing happiness in this world is the result of cherishing others. He says of the grasping of the ego, "What use is that monster in me?" The benefits of cherishing others. Similarly, in his Lama Choba, Penjin Lobsang Chugi Genzin says, "The thought of cherishing others and wanting to lead them to happiness is a source of limitless realizations and great qualities. Therefore, even if the entire community of sentient beings arises as my enemy, in return, may I be able to cherish every one of them in my own life." Similarly, verse 6 of the 8 verses on thought training says, "When someone I have benefited and in whom I have placed great trust hurts me very badly, I will practice seeing that person as my supreme teacher." In the 7-point thought training, Geshe encourages us to contemplate the kindness of all sentient beings and to remain grateful to them. Furthermore, Shantideva says, "I do not need to talk more about the benefits of cherishing others because you can understand it by just comparing how much Buddhas gain with how little we have achieved." Shakyamuni Buddha started out equal to sentient beings, but because he had the capacity to care for others and developed bodhichitta, he achieved great enlightenment. Because we have not developed our capacities as Buddha did, we remain sentient beings unable to advance. In Lama Choba it says, "Ordinary sentient beings work only for themselves, whereas Buddhas work for others." Through understanding this example, we gain the motivation to learn to exchange ourselves with others. The only difference between the Lama Choba and the Bodhicharya Avatara is the words. The basic message is the same. Studying the different texts is extremely helpful because it gives us different ways of looking at things and helps us to expand our understanding. Exchange of self with others. The fourth topic is the actual exchange of self with others. What we must do here is to replace our previous self-cherishing thoughts with thoughts of cherishing others and ignore our own selfish concerns. Here is an illustration. If there are two mountains and we are on one of them, that one becomes our side. The second mountain becomes the other side. But if we are on the second mountain, looking at the first mountain, the first one becomes the other side. So we have to change our point of reference regarding whom we cherish most. We need to change our perspective and replace our self-cherishing thoughts with thoughts of cherishing others. So if we go back to the first category, throughout the explanation you'll have noticed that Geshe references the Lama Choba to complement and in correspondence with the explanations on the Tonglen. So if we go back to the first category of equality of oneself and others, the stanza, give me just a moment. Let me upload or post the text again, just in case we have.
Kani donle kachi tae mara de injir. Donle de tae mara. De yo mara pagi. Yo mara.
Ale ne?
Ne de khane.
Ale.
Konsul kani de adverses de
mara. Ale de chuba ma de mara.
Donle de tae mara.
Ale de tangani khatu
Pajan dajana.
Digana. Digiro.
Was chat nan dajana. Ale khame.
Ale sure. So a couple of things. Again, one of the nuances of Zoom, or seems to be something that we haven't figured out yet, is that when we have participants join the meeting a little bit later than when we start, what was initially posted doesn't appear. So I was about to go and post it again, but then we also realized that in our PDF, it might not have, the PDF might not include this section of the text that we're reading. For the sake of today, apologies for that, but for the sake of today, let me take a picture of the few pages that we just read, and then you can have them for your reference and go through them as well. Let's go.
What's going to PDF so you the young team some way in the Chadon PDF.
So what the science matter?
Sure.
There was it. This guy the part Luya Kurahare.
Nah. Pajatu day. Pajatu no Katu Danshan.
Paja.
Par Anzunaju Bachin Jara. Then a Katu Jatu with me. Naju on the Bachin Padora.
Apologies, give me just a moment here. If I want to share something. Maybe I can do it this way. Thank you for your patience, but we feel it's important that you have the reference material so you can follow along with us. I'm going to do this in an informal, kind of improvised way here. Okay, I hope you can bear with us, just for the sake of today. Forgot that the PDF didn't contain this section of the text. Okay, give me just a moment.
Okay.
Did everyone receive those pictures that I sent in the chat box there? Hopefully you did. And then I'll go ahead and post the others as well.
가성은 증여 PDF더라.
Okay. All right. So we believe that everyone has the text and the pictures now. Just in case you don't, or there are any issues from your end, please feel free to send a message in the chat box there, and we'll check throughout the session. There's another one I'd like to share too, and this is of the Lama Chöpa, because the Lama Chöpa is being referenced here in Geshe's commentary. 단지간이 대선 당부드나 Lama Chöpa sikjiti dirba.
동물 참모자면 되지.
등에 참모자면 되지.
내라나요 주시면 나도 전화 집으로 해야 나도 전화 집으로 해야 신디가 와지 버리지. 맞지는 되면 아니 전화님 분이 몰라잖아.
어래. 어래. 대대 치디. 등을 참모자면 되지, 그러나? 알았어.
동을 참모자면 되지. 내라나 주시면.
어래.
아주 신진 간대신 바이네 진동의 취지 제는 가서 문제 받아. 네, 다단다 가서 되는 사진을 장 사진 담을 때도 나도 신체 참아 아니 땀용 거야 되려도 다 이제 땀용선 단다 냠래 라이지라 냠바 거야 되려도 냠바데 지난 냠바 거야 되려야 네 건조고 돈은 냠바 거야 또 당도 냠바 거야 니체 다 건조고 돈은 냠바 거야 써야 돼 저거로 알아서 신체 가르치 이바이나 너무 춘지는 되고요 말했어 너무 잘못하면 되진스라 다 대화들은 대화 장도 마세베지 아니 대화들 왜 조시촌매 단다 대화지 존은 들리자마 존나 상상 들이 제와지요 말씀이 참아지 버려야 돼요 그래서 로신전 참아지 버려야 돼요 그래서 너무 잘못하면 되지 들라나요 조심하면 됐어 라 다다전에 치버려야 미시스 당아서 다전이 오들 치버지요 말했어 수수인의 베트코나 너무 잘못하면 되고 말해 아니 대화 간제치 정말이네 대화 체험에 신는 도스 너디고 요래 띠치버지지 않으면 참아 다이나라 제이나라 당아서 신경 소신이 바이나 띠치버러 왔어 그래서 근데 인자 내가 서 냠바 공부에 디 내가 대차고 그랬어 제한테 가와치 버첸치로스 되잖아요 수술을 대화 고와 나셴게 아니 제한에 대화 고와 인자 아니 제 대화다 가보용이야기 안에 직 단단히 순디 쳐보여라 아마 주가 나와라 아마도 저 단다 삼봐야 돼 다시 냠그랬어야 돼
So if we go back to the first category out of the 5, that'll be the first picture that I sent there. Hopefully you can zoom in and follow what we were reading a few moments ago. Just as mentioned here in the commentary, and as referenced in the Lama Shubha, the main emphasis and focus here is equality, or the thought and the fact that we're all the same, and when we say we mean both oneself and others. So the self and others are we and others. Ourselves and others are all the same in the sense that we all wish to be free from suffering and wish to not have to experience any suffering. And then desire and hope for happiness and pleasure. We're all the same in this way, and we're all equal in this way. This is the strongest commonality that we have as beings, whether we think of it from the lens of our, from the aspect or point of view of just ourselves or others. And so when we see this greater commonality, or this greatest commonality of oneself and others, we're able to see ourselves and others as the same, and we're able to bring everyone, or see ourselves and everyone as being on the same page, or the same playing field, if you will. And give it just a moment that the mic seems to be. Okay, hopefully that's a little bit better. And so, so this point, in reference to the Lama Shubha, is what we wanted to share. Actually have, give me just a moment, and I can share this with you, just so you can see it word for word. Word for word explanation, and you can see what it actually looks like in the Lama Shubha itself. So as Geshe quoted or mentioned, is explained in the Lama Shubha. This very point or focus of category, the first category here, can be seen in verse 90. So if you just view that picture really quickly, zoom in, and you can see verse 90. So the one, the mention of, or the reference of what's explained in the Lama Chopa in accordance to category number 1, equality of oneself and others, is here in the actual verse itself in the Lama Chopa is there in verse 90. Honest.
Adini, nibadi lobe.
Honest.
Nibadi da rang changing chun said rendo. Rang changing chun said. The rang changing chun said in all that the Lama Chopa sit in the town, yes, Lama Chopa sit down a gente down. Shanti Debagi down. Juju sit the drawings, right? Lama Chopa Nalola to the city down, yes,
Rani Shababa.
Rani Chibrans of his chun in this. Mendu Donguchi Jutone. The land of Contos on City. Dancing don't change over Chinchillos. Atina no the order as a big challenge. Shewa in Azugitachi, Nasaya, Tria Major, Nasadu, little Peshara. Tamazugi Simnalola, Nasa Cinema, the Takan and Roti, Mazalakan on side of the Junkondo, the Ma Davuto, dancing down. Any Rani Japanese and Vichenzi, needy, whose chavi or rest. Chatanazo Machibatan, Kanyan on Donga. And then Lu don't sing the Donga Karish Yong in the Yonsati as a contours and we are Chungo Kano Tuchi Tusa Tavaina, and then Rani Jebranzevich Jenzing, Tedan, and then dancing those chatting your restaurant. That in it. Tendegi Jenzing tea, Wangi, and then also Chile Hadon, Jinyava Sayadon, Azuka Kanyama, which is someone. Digi Sudi Wara. The Rani Chibans of Chonindi. Mandu don't be Jotonis. Ra? Digi Zodo Takano, so Mandu be Jots. Mandu be Tachi, also the Donga, Rit, Sama, and the Rani Chens in the Wangi, also Kanyados, young girls, Chesant in the Tinganzin Chats, Geshe Chagiores. Ra, Azuki, Mancha, teacher was in the Chegomara. Dongan Chung did some much of cheap mobici, Ton Dongan Chung, also now the Shadigara. Then it's all in the Mache. Also Donga the Kari, Chung, we met around single Suta, Sim de Nalolea, the Chinarama, we have been on it, the Tusato, the Yatsichi and the Pudo, Tusato, Rani Chins and dancing the Tondo Yoba. Rani Chins of Vichun and the Middle Donga Chivichutone, the land de la Contos on Chete. And then Nanze don't change over Chinchillos. The Yabucha Hako go Chevalay and Jung Takan Kansachi Tagora, Tanangas and the sequent Hibudo, the Dusha Jodina Sungwera, and that the Shitsabucha Hago and Lamrin Chamotan, there's my Shitsabalo, and there's another for Shita Tabayora, and there's Samalo, and then also the Tusa Sama, the Tuya, but the Hakotsane. Then also dress at the Churili and Yovatan, Chi, Mijang, and also Kanye Sugi, but the real notch in the Masha, and the Kanye Courage Chumba and Zugu Sati Ranchins in the Tanzil at Suzu, and the Kanye Courage Chumba in a dish, Shuchi Chonga Wanging, and the Kanye Chunga, but the Ratrice, and Tilapak Pakam totally Bayagi, Mason Chevina, and also Cindeline and Nika in a Jew, and Mamba, Saratanjo the Jew, and it was
So the focus of the second category are the disadvantages of self-cherishing, and as mentioned here in the commentary, and then also in verse 91 of the Lama Chopa, the understanding that all suffering and unpleasantness and all adverse causes and conditions that we experience come from what is known as self-cherishing and then self-grasping. This self-cherishing or self-grasping is this over-focus and emphasis on oneself, despite our intentions to bring ourselves happiness and peace and pleasure. This grasping at the self and this cherishing of just the self brings about the complete opposite result of what we're looking for. Once we come to the conclusion and understanding that this is the root of our problems, we can slowly go about finding ways to solve. Here is a mention of the example of seeing it as a chronic illness. So we can go about ways to treat this illness. This particular point has been made, or the essence of this point is being shared in this category in a very concise way. If you have the opportunity, we would greatly encourage you to gain a stronger sense of familiarization with the understanding of the meaning of these categories and these verses through reading and studying other sources and texts, including the great treatise on the sages of the path to enlightenment, or Langri, along with many other crucial and fundamental works. And it's through the explanations and the learning and the contemplation of these teachings that you'll gain a greater foothold of the main essence being shared here. When thinking about the disadvantages of self-cherishing. But if we were to look at just this point, this main point here, through the commentary and through verse 91, then we can see that we can compare and see the parallels and use the example of a chronic disease or a chronic illness as a way of perceiving our self-cherishing. And then just as chronic illness and disease causes great pain and suffering, the cause of our own the cause of our great pain and suffering is the self-cherishing. And so if you go back to the commentary on page 154, you also see that we should confront, it says here in the first line, that we should confront our own self-cherishing and say to ourselves, you are responsible for all this. To really identify this self-cherishing as the root of all our pain and suffering, and to see it as the true enemy. That's what's important, and that's what's being emphasized here in this particular category.
tanda chunshun rawo chi tagay ba ina di minyamdo rawo chi nroba ina ane nga zo soso shuji di rangshi tsawo chi dingen chi inba ina nko jiwo shira yung mura ta ra ane chi mila tabdan rawo chi mila jen la ya chi kanto togu tabdan chi ane to chi jen la ya tsa chimbo kaze chi dingen chi inba ina nko chi kaa ina chobo ma ane mi nyamdo kaze chi towa ina mi turn cheba 아니 지 가이나 나와지고 상로대 고향 뭐 용고에 받아서 전화 준준질 다기나 한데 하고 도로 왔어 대나신지 다들 로디가 간토도 봐 이제 치리치리치 땅 쟤는 내가 상로 고향 뭐 써야 돼 계시물 했어 아니 가서 소소에 소소 쇼지 자체부터랑 시 차고 같이 제가 있는 그 상로대 부스 도르도르도 그 미유고는 지모도 요 말아 근데 젠세야 돼 자체모 쇼 차대라다 젠세야 돼 이제 자체모 제고 중생 지대 대차고라다 젠데 쇼지 장면 되어라다 랑 수수 미치로 젠스가 되잖아요 수수를 배드 망그러다 딘자 젠 젠진 가제 제와 있는 로자티 치른로야 그럼 미유데 배 자체가 인자 로자티 치른로 상로데 고양을치 아니 수수 지 지고용야 너 대체와 용으로 왔어 되면서 화신주야 오지 상로야 오지 당는 거 하고 또 도야는 난 진짜 그러왔지 양나 쪽에 있다다 수수의 전쟁 체야 요말했을 때잖아요 다다가서 수수 가르쳐오는 이제 그래서는 수수를 도보 다야도 수수 배 쇼지디 제야든 이렇게 말했어 수수가 저부터 다 오지 하야도 수수디 가르쳐 왔다지 배트코나 수수랑랑에 통용시야도 이렇게 말했어 나가서 저로들랑 수수 자체부 제야 된 것은 해지를 해야 되라 디호 인자 딜레 쇼지 딜레 라바 소소 젠리랑 자체가 임마상 상다한테 상담을 하지네 아니 다신양부터 소소랑 라니라니라 자체부 쇼지 체계 요번나 신기 디 상로도 봐 고사 지부전의 젠레야디 디나신 자체부 인고를 사면 데르만도 배는 라니라니 통중 당신의 자체부를 사는 데게 말했어 그래서 이거 치고 이렇게 좀 말했어
So, when we are trapped in this thought of self-cherishing and we grasp only at ourselves and put our focus only on our own well-being, the scope and capacity of our minds and of our thoughts are very limited because they're focused on just oneself. It's almost as if you're closing the walls or closing the gates, and the perimeter of these walls or gates are very small. But if you expand upon that and shift the focus, just as mentioned earlier, between the two mountains, if you remember that example, if you shift the reference point or the point of reference and the focus outwards or towards others, compared to oneself, who is just one individual, others are countless. And so when that shift of focus is applied, the restricted, kind of narrow perimeter of the fence or the walls also expands and becomes countless. So you're expanding and opening up your mind and your heart. And in this process, you're bringing, not only are you able to benefit others, but you're naturally bringing yourself the very peace of mind and happiness that you seek. If we're to use a very first-hand example, if you will, on the day-to-day, we all have experiences with different individuals, and when we, for example, if you happen to be interacting with an individual who is very selfish, you may begin to feel a certain discomfort and aversion to being around this individual. And then let's say, you're with this individual in a group, you'll notice that others too may kind of tend to try to avoid this individual or themselves act in ways that are that you can see that they're uncomfortable around this individual. Whereas if you are with someone who is open-minded, thinks about others, cares for others, cares about what others think and feel, about what their preferences are, about what their opinions are, and is open-minded again. And you'll see that this individual is a lot more flexible, more pleasurable to be around, easier to be around, easier to talk to, so on and so forth. So even if you compare, these very immediate scenarios that we've all gone through in our lives, you can see that between being around, the experience of being close to a selfish individual versus an individual who is open-minded and puts others first, you can see the great contrast. And so we can use this as an example to motivate ourselves. This is a very valid scenario to use because we're starting small and because we're starting at the beginning. It's valid and important to use these immediate scenarios that we have experienced in our lives and we experience on the day-to-day to have them as comparison points and reference points in our practice.
타마데 딩아서 젠첸진시야지라 젠첸진시 랑첸진 디 조자오라다라 젠 요르도와다라 다 요르도와데 랑 요르도와다 네 랑첸버는 젠바티 로딩이 오고사 조자오르스드잖아요 아서 기타 랑이랑 통중단데 서로 근데 지금 마와인 바던 지 되게 계셔 말했어.
And so when we emphasize or the concept of shifting that focus from oneself to others is presented, this is not meant to be misunderstood as a self-sacrifice or a giving up of oneself, or a mindless kind of giving up of oneself, a martyrdom, if you will. You're not meant to belittle or completely neglect and forfeit yourself. As mentioned as before in the text, what we're trying to do is just as we do our best to bring about the best for ourselves, we must strive to have that same thought for others and see others just like ourselves. So just as we're trying our best to take care of ourselves, we need to try to do the best that we can to take care of others as well. It's not, okay, I'm going to put others first and then I'm just going to completely neglect myself and then I'm nothing, I'm not important. And then in that process, what's at risk is, or what could happen is that you completely forfeit and dismiss yourself or your sense of self, and then you lose self-confidence, self-trust, self-belief, and completely neglect self-care. And that's not what's being shared here. It's take care of yourself, but expand upon that. It's not just about doing your best to bring about happiness and all the most wanted causes, conditions for just yourself, but to see all the others as completely the same and as equal, and to expand upon that. And instead of just keeping yourself within this restricted wall, you're now looking beyond that wall and beyond the gates, and at the countless others around you. And so now this this foundation of thinking, or this basis of your thought process and of your thinking, is now very vast and wide, rather than restricted and narrow. So it's important that when we read and analyze and contemplate cherishing others, it's important that we don't misinterpret that as a forfeiting or a neglecting of the self. Just as we bring ourselves, as we seek to bring ourselves the most positive and desirable causes and conditions, we must seek to do the same for all others and have them be just as equal in our focus and our motivations.
Yes.
Yes.
The thought of cherishing
the thought of cherishing others and wanting to lead them to happiness is a source of willingness and great qualities. The thought of cherishing others and wanting to lead So if we go to the third category, you'll see that the focus is on the benefits of cherishing others, and the reference to the Lama Shabba verse is that in verse 94 in the picture, it's also quoted here. The thought of cherishing others and wanting to lead them to happiness is a source of limitless realizations and good qualities. So just as self-cherishing is the root of all our problems and suffering, cherishing others is the root of all great qualities and happiness. If we think about the ultimate attainment, the ultimate goal of Buddhahood or enlightenment, if we use this step-by-step cause and result process to prove and to see and to reinforce the importance of self-cherishing, we can see it laid out here, that when it comes to the attainment, the highest attainment, or the highest goal of, or the ultimate goal of enlightenment or Buddhahood, that in itself is not possible without the cultivation of bodhicitta. The development of bodhicitta in itself, its focus is cherishing others, and bodhicitta cannot be cultivated likewise without the practice of cherishing others. And so if we can look at kind of the cause and effect process there, or cause and result process there, we can see that self-cherishing becomes an essential root cause for enlightenment or for Buddhahood. So here, just as mentioned here, within the quote is the mention of great qualities. So all great qualities, including the stages and the paths and the grounds that eventually lead to Buddhahood, are not possible without the practice of self-cherishing, cherishing others. So with that in mind, you can see how important cherishing others is, and you can see how important self-cherishing is in receiving, in one receiving benefits and experiencing realizations and qualities. But even outside of the realm of Buddhist practice and spirituality, when it comes to self-cherishing versus cherishing others, again, another example that's similar to the one that we I brought up with you before, but let's say another first-hand experience kind of scenario that many of you, that all of us will have had with at least our families or someone close to us. You can see that within a group, within a family or within a group, that any disagreement and discord or disharmony is caused by grasping and over focus on self-interest. If one thinks outside of oneself and thinks about the group, can act according to the needs of the group, and can act with thought of what's best for the group. If everyone in that group thinks in this way, then things stay stable, things run smoothly, the relationships are harmonious, and they take care of themselves because everyone's taking care of each other. If you compare that to, let's say, a group where everyone's just thinking about their own self-interest and what they want, there can never really be a strong sense of harmony or coming together, seeing eye to eye, meeting each other halfway. These variables are not possible if there's overemphasis and overfocus on self-interest and cherishing one's own personal needs and desires. So in this way, even outside again of the realm of Buddhist practice, in our everyday experiences with our close ones and our families, we can feel and have felt before and experienced the benefits of thinking outside of oneself, thinking of others, and thinking on behalf of the group, and again expanding the scope and the limit of one's thought process to accommodate a much greater number of individuals, and with that comes a much greater expanded way of thinking and point of view, and that in turn is beneficial and brings us a sense of peace and happiness.
ane dan do dun shuwa ina dan lama shuwa non do na che ba ran de ko na to wa jin de ba jin ze ba chon do yin de yo to bel da jin nra da jin ya jin ne shi chi la ra de ne chon yo cha ma na la la mon do she to chi shu bus che ba rang gi tan che to ane to wa jin chi tan che ba de ni jin de chi wor tes ta de sa ra ta ma bu 고야스 게임도 스타 just 좀 쉬어라더라. 아주 가르를 다시 수도 전에 아주 수수 주어도 참하게 다 란데 장장 진수수를 미유도 수수 조자 침무치는 송신은 아주 동원이야 되고요. 받대다. 안에 또 상지 중된 얘기 제는 바신 제치는 거기 뒤치 상지 고마라서 토치는데 그런 쇼지 대화 참 토네. 제고도 대대와 되니고 된 아주 돌다스. 아니 제 젠지 젠이 야도 다 란젠지 젠이 야도 세팅 아주 텔레페션션 아주 통통을 해야지.
As shared here in the commentary, similarities are highlighted in the verses of the Lama Shubha, in the Bodhisattva Avatara, and then other works as well that highlight again the differences between the differences in the results of self-cherishing and then cherishing others. So if you look at verse 93, there in from the Lama Shubha, you'll see that what's being shared is ourselves in comparison to or our focus and the impacts of this focus on just ourselves or our self-cherishing versus the focus and the perspectives of the great realized beings and the Buddhas, and within this the comparison of qualities between ourselves and the Buddhas, you can see such a great difference, and this is dictated by again this focus on where we guide that focus. For the Buddhas, their sheer focus is purely on, or their focus is sheerly on others, while ourselves we continue to toil in self-cherishing, and because of that, you can see the results of between ourselves, if in comparison to the awakened ones, or the Buddhas. So, understanding this or using it as a reference and as an inspirational state of mind or perspective to shift our focus onto others rather than ourselves is important and highly helpful and beneficial.
Yes. What did you say? Tamad Shushubeskim. Shibadra. Tatanda Troyan Taranas.
So that's what we would like to share with you today. Those are our thoughts on the commentary. We now have a few moments to answer any questions you may have. If there are any comments or experiences or insight you would like to share, please feel free to do so. We now surrender the floor to you. If you're following us online, please feel free to send your question or comment in the main chat box there. Forward time, Roger. You miss less. Jenna, the cancer, the gangy, the Japanese set. She cancer Shusharo. Miss some of the Zuji Limmer.
Oh,
Any Tama here. Michigli the Chita, Michigli the Shisha.
The eye was swimming.
Man,
You injured some. The Dangachi chair. Let me chill it
there. We have a question here online that reads, if I genuinely want someone to be happy, but at the same time I want them to be happy far away from me, is that being selfish? Ani Tane Shem Michigua Ani Raniki Koranda Kiwutan, Kiwchuna, Dewachuna, some Susan Dewayosha. Tani Midi Chikiwchuna, some the Kiw Yuandi Sosole Sosadan Ta rings, Sos Chilla members. The Sosu can be most chili the membership of Koran Kiw Yuandi. Tani Pakistan Adam Kakachani Roda, other than 10. Talk of suggestion that way at the nation or the initial Kokiwa Yuan Shong, some of the Devaki at the Yorubas. The new Devaki, the new Devadi, the new Azure. Any the Ranshi, so in Suchawi in us, the some little shoddy, and the two young run to young university. Yan the Corona chick, the corner to Kiwchuna something. The inner the Gilia a little chick tarrings issue. Past was chick rather. Any Koran Pagi, then Roa, any Kola Pagi, then any Koran the Pagi has started massage the layer, and Kiwchuna some Ravajata, the Badin, Gia Yoros. Did the Badi any Korean? Round the day their country in us.
The round and red woman, some of the Jevashera. Penamazo sounded Chile and Susambucha Chavia Wachera. Chile and Susambuchavia Wache. Takonaji the Chungu do in the Kungetila Madero Chena, Kotarins, Chiden, Jivuchon Chena, Samaina, and Tiri Garlaura, Jivuchona Samet, some of the Yavore day, and Dida Yamdo current Jaguars, the San and the Tigora. That's all of the Sutil Madero Chena, Samati, Shuchayana. Any Susu Ranchins in the Tangri to your rest. But the name of Susu Cheba the Kaima Jevache, and the Koran Tarin Salayone, Koranchi, which will channel some Tarin Sajasus till the Meva in Nayanska, Ratanazara, could Susu till the Mene to chew the Tarin, which in the Ruga and then it's Nisu the Yumura, Tiri yungdi zani ko tarin san yoba ine kora, jibu chungro chena samba inani kora, di zama cha kora. Yen, ta yen chenzen cha kora.
So, a very good question. If this wish for someone to be happy,
Gyeltsen la tayar ta tsura.
is under the condition that they must be far away from you, then it could be kind of muddled in a selfishness or a self-concern. If it must be under this condition, only that they're not close to you. Whether or not a wish is selfish or concerned with oneself can be identified through the thought or the motivation or the reason involved in this wish. So, or the conditions involved in this wish, or if there are conditions at all. So, if it must be met with this condition, that they are far away from you, and the fact that if they're far away from you, impacts you and brings you some kind of gratification, then yes, probably there is there is some sort of a level of self-concern involved. But if it's without that condition, and you remove the self or the I from the whole conversation, and it's the focus is just purely on this person experiencing happiness, wherever and whenever, then it's likely to be more. The focus is likely to be more just purely on that individual, and then mixed in there with any self-interest or selfishness.
chisa ta tinga zo lo zor ni chen thambu changsha che lo thambu changsha che chen to sin ro yo wa ina ene jen ge den ta to ya le ngore ti khaze ta to wa ina da jen lang ne da chön ne er tar wa so so ni ko mang cha ji de yen den tong yong yen den tong na so so da jen chen ze da le la wo shu cha sa ran ene jen la chambu cha ya ne le la wo cha sa ran ne ji wo yong ya de rang shen cha no ra da.
So a main point and focus to think about is the thought of or the concept of thinking and contemplating, thinking about and contemplating others' qualities and one's own faults. More often than not, for us, we're so used to doing the opposite of only identifying and grasping and grabbing onto and acknowledging our qualities while trying to hide our faults, and then instead of acknowledging the qualities of others just as we would in ourselves, we hone in on their flaws and their faults. In this practice, in a way of thinking of focusing on others' qualities and thinking about our faults and flaws, some might say, "Oh, well, that's not honest. We're not being honest when we do that." But if that's the case, then you can see that. Then we can all see that it's the same. There's this same kind of dishonesty applies to our own usual way of thinking, where we only acknowledge our qualities and chase after and hone in on the few flaws and faults of others. If we're able to slowly develop a habituation and a familiarization with others' qualities, we'll be able to see the value in them, and we'll start to really develop a fondness with these qualities, or of these qualities, and then we'll really start to cherish them and value them. And the more we focus on the qualities of others, the more we cherish them, the more we value them, the more we'll be able to make progress in our practice of cherishing others naturally. It'll happen naturally in this way. If you see someone in their qualities, you'll have and naturally feel a closeness, feel a comfort when thinking about them and being near them. And so this is something that a practice that we must do, and we must reverse in terms of our psychology and our thinking. A lot of the time, we're just so used to a negative way of looking at others, and drawing this barrier, this boundary between ourselves and others. For example, despite others' qualities, we take them for granted. We don't acknowledge them, but we hone in and grasp and clutch at the few flaws that they have. An example here would be, let's say, someone is doing a particular job or activity or a type of work, and for a number of hours they do a great job, but at the end, let's say they kind of get tired or they get distracted, and they despite putting in, let's say, 8 hours of work, at the end they kind of take it easy for 15-20 minutes or half an hour, and in most cases you can notice, or we can notice in ourselves, that instead of feeling happy and gratified or satisfied with the work that they put in for 8 hours, 8 of the previous hours, we'll clutch and grasp at the 20 minutes that they didn't do a good job, or they were just relaxing. So this is just one scenario that we can use. And we should be honest with ourselves. We do this a lot. It's so easy to pick at the flaws of others, despite their countless qualities in comparison. So this scenario kind of highlights our habituation to a certain type of thinking in psychology. So what we're trying to do is change that perspective, and rather than thinking about others' flaws and faults, we should really do our best to acknowledge and identify their qualities, just as we would in ourselves. So viewing others' qualities, or cherishing others for their qualities, and then taking a moment to obviously acknowledge our own qualities, but then also think about and focus on our faults and flaws, so that we can uproot them, rather than it being the other way around, like we are just so naturally used to. Doesn't seem like there are any other questions or comments for now, so we'll go ahead and end the session. Let us take a moment to dedicate our collective merit and good imprints today, and we'll do this through reciting the dedication that's at the very beginning of the text. I hope you all have the text that I posted twice. So if you open up the commentary, you'll see at the very beginning, the very first page, right after the copyright page, is the dedication. So please recite this along with us. To His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama of Tibet, and all the holy masters of the Buddha Dharma, may they have long and healthy lives. To the teachings of the Buddha, may they endure for a very long time. To the members of the Sangha community, may they abide in pure morality, be free of any schism, and succeed in their studies and contemplations. To all beings, may they be free from suffering, and may they attain great enlightenment. To all the nations of the world, may they be free from illness, famine, war, and conflicts. May lasting peace prevail and endure forever. Thank you for your participation, and we hope to see you next week. Thank you.